Specifications wise, it's a quite interesting device. Comes with an OLED display with a resolution of 1080 by 1920, having Unisoc T820 CPU with a G57 Mali GPU, 8 hours of gaming time and 8 GB of memory. Nevertheless, this is a quite interesting overall specification list, but how does it result in overall emulation power? So as making this video, I think it is only going to be released in 2 different colors. I got myself like the translucent purple one, and there is a little bit of one thing that I find quite annoying about it, but I will later on tell you what it is. But when it comes to, let's say, the overall design, this is similar that we have seen with Powkiddies, for example, with this very nice ergonomic design. But the device is quite big, it is also very comfortable. And I can tell you, I'm very pleasantly surprised by the overall, let's say, comfortability of this. Most of the Anbenic devices nowadays can play up to PlayStation 1, Sega Dreamcast and even some Sega Saturn for a price point around like $100 or slightly a little bit more. This thing is almost double the price. But then is of course the question, is it really worth it? With this ergonomic design, I can tell you holding this thing in your hand is absolutely a very pleasant experience. So here you can just actually see how bright the LEDs out of stock from this device. It's absolutely annoying because if you're going to be using it on a different, let's say, angle, you're just looking straight into them. Okay, so that's maybe me being nitpicky about it, but just want to actually showcase it and tell you this. So besides that, it comes in a beautiful display, and that is what we can expect from a price quality point when you're looking at the Anbenic, let's say the higher and more expensive lineup. On top we're finding the on and off switch over here. We can also use for standby if it's going to be automatically goes in standby mode, volume control and the exhaust for the cooling. The shoulder and the trigger is absolutely great, where we're having an actually trigger button over here and having a micro switch on the shoulder. And the combination where you're actually holding it, it's very comfortable and plays very well. At the right side we're having over here the select and start. And of course another joystick and the ABXY buttons. The buttons itself have a very nice touch, a long travel touch. When you're going to be doing the Wicked ASMR test, you can just feel that they have a very nice feel to it. And at the left side we're having over here the Anbenic logo for special features, and of course having the return and the home button. At the bottom part we're finding a USB-C and headphone jack, and having here the option for adding an SD card. And then we're having implemented 2 speakers over here, and yeah, stereo speakers. And due of the form factor, you have a lot of space to basically just put in some great speakers, and can tell you these things sound absolutely great. The first time you're going to be booting it up, it will ask you a couple of questions to set a couple of things up, including all of the emulators. And that's what they did absolutely great when it comes to this Android version. So here you can just see everything has been configured already, and this is absolutely great. Having RetroArch and all the emulators set up, so you don't actually need to do anything. You have the Play Store if you want to add, let's say, different games, and you want to use this thing like in Game Machine. So that's absolutely great. By pressing the R button or the Anbenic logo, here we're going into their front end, and in here we can find all kinds of different games you can play. You can see when it comes to, let's say, the support, we're having over here PlayStation 2. That's one of the, let's say, systems we don't have with the budget devices. And we have so many cool things. PlayStation Portable, that is going to be having overall greater performance with this, or at least I'm expecting that. Some Wii and even 3DS. And yeah, you have all kinds of different support for different emulators. And this is absolutely a very cool device if you just want to have a little bit better overall support for different emulators. And of course, if you're going back to, let's say, the Play Store, you're logging in with your Google account, you can add cool games. Think about if you're having a Netflix account, you can just play the games I think it was Turtles, but you can also buy and download games like Street of Rage. So the thing I've noticed with the Anbernic is that when you're looking at the display itself, it has this weird bluish color to it. So where I'm not the biggest fan of, let's say, the colors, and if you're looking at my videos, I don't really mention that a lot, but I just noticed it, that this display is not the best display personally I've ever seen. Okay, so in settings, let's turn this thing all the way back because this is absolutely too crazy when it comes to the brightness over here. So let's put this on 50%. So I just wanted to see adaptive brightness can be enabled if you want to. Alright, so next up we have all kinds of settings like every, let's say, Android device. Okay, so another thing for, let's say, getting into, let's say, some other configurations, you need to slide all the way down here. You're finding the internet, Bluetooth, auto rotation and light, but we're going to have more options if you're going to be sliding it again. And in here we're finding the key mapper. So the key mapper is a piece of software that can be very beneficial if you want to configure this with shooting games that have no controller support, what I understand of, and the ambient light can be shut down. Yep, and I'm going to be shutting it down now forever because the LEDs, Man, they are freaking annoying. Alright, so the first part I just want to get into the emulation, just to see how the overall performance is. So there are many different devices that can actually play all the way up to PlayStation 1 and even some Sega Dreamcast and some Sega Saturn. So you don't really need to buy an expensive product like this. So what I'm going to be focusing clearly is like of course on the PlayStation 2, Wii Emulation and GameCube, just to see how far we can push this device. Another feature you need to take consideration is of course the hybrid function, the Android. So our example over here, I'm also going to be testing Street of Rage 4, Turtles, Shredder's Revenge and even some Grand Theft Auto San Andreas. There's like you're going to be some of them you need to play through the Netflix, let's say streaming or let's say gaming servers, and Street of Rage 4 needs to be bought. Nevertheless, if you're going to be looking into all of the features, maybe then this device is actually worth its money. Oh my god, this is really like pissing me off. Let's see if this thing is actually configured. So out of the box it seems to be not working, or it does. Yep, it works. But here we can just see that the overall emulation performance is absolutely great. I think if you want to play some N64 with even higher resolutions, we just need to get ourselves like a Windows or a Steam Deck, because those things are even a little bit more expensive, but the overall performance is absolutely amazing. But for what you're getting, it's not bad at all. So I'm booting up some Dreamcast with Sonic Adventure 2. This is one of those games that really takes advantage of the speakers inside this thing. Wow. Man, it's absolutely flabbergasting how good it sounds. And you know, that is what you're getting with some like premium devices. But let's get into the game itself. So with a device like this is absolutely amazing, and I think if you're going to be messing around with some Redream, you can even like upscale it to higher resolutions, and still getting an amazing overall, let's say, experience. Just going to be leave it as is.
Security door breach. Emergency formation. Intercept intruder.
Wow, absolutely great. But you can go back over here into the Redream that is pre-installed. You can just see what kind of, let's say, aspect ratio it is set to, of having the system and everything else. But I'm guessing they're using the normal version, so we're not getting the option for having upscaling going on. So if you're going to be activating it, that is something I should have done. You can just activate and mess around with the system, and even having like say the unlocked version having new features. We're not even surprised you can even like run this thing on 720p maybe. Another thing I just wanted to check out, and I think a lot of people were interested to seeing the PlayStation 2 be running on this. So let's start off with some Tekken Tag, because that's one of the games I do see when it comes to PlayStation Portable. It's going to be an overall mixed performance with the emulator that is pre-installed on this. Okay, so PlayStation 2 is a system a lot of people were asking for. So with the Windows, let's say x86 devices, we can play PlayStation without any problem. But with this, you can just hear from the audio standpoint that it runs really slow with a lot of dips. And this is the problem I'm having with this. Maybe with some let's say installing a different emulator, we can get an overall better performance. You can also like getting into the settings, go start like messing around with this, having a fast boot already, let's say, enabled, so that's great, so it started into the game. But you know, it's more like a compatibility issue. You can just like the GPU rendering can be maybe switched out. Upscaling multiply has just set to native, so we cannot change anything out there. But you know, that's the thing. It's going to be a hit or miss with PlayStation. So let's try a different game and give you a look that not everything is going to be running that bad. So let's try another game where we have like minor dips. This game runs perfectly or almost perfectly on the device. It's absolutely great, you know. So it's like a hit or miss with PlayStation 2. Not only the overall performance when it comes to, let's say, the device itself, but it is particular of like the emulator support and the game. I find it still such a weird game. But there you have it. The all famous dip. I have no idea what's going on. Somehow it just dips now. But in other words, I think if you guys really want to play PlayStation 2, you can just tinker with emulators and all kinds of weird things. But after resetting, just going back into an emulator, there was just like an emulator problem. Now it seems to be running just fine. One other thing I also noticed when it comes to this particular device is like sometimes you need to get into, let's say, the emulator itself, because we do have still the freaking annoying buttons. So going to the settings over here, then going to the controls, and here we can disable the untouched controls. Okay, so that was one of the things. Graphics, so let's see what is running. Vulkan, no frame skipping. And let's see, still the native resolution. You can always like tinker with this if you want to just play in not saying just a certain game. If it's not like a very demanding game, like a two-dimensional one, you can just mess around with the settings, seeing if this is going to be running overall better. But this device is so much more powerful, where I do expect overall good performance when it comes to playing some PlayStation Portable. Let's get into the game. Frames per second is still 60. Of course, Tekken 6, it's less demanding than, let's say, in God of War, but just see what happens if we're going to be booting up the game. You see it dip to 47. But with this particular one, let's say, device, oh man, playing PlayStation 2 emulation was a mixed overall performance, but with PlayStation, it runs absolutely great. It looks great, it sounds great. And also with this, if you have problems when it comes to compatibility, you can always see to upgrade the PlayStation Portable, let's say, emulator. Okay, so moving on to some Android stuff. So take consideration, if you want to play like Shredder's Revenge of the Turtle game, you need to have a Netflix subscription. But games like Street of Rage 4, you can just download it and buy it, download it and play it, and have it in your collection forever. I can just really enjoy it, especially when the fine D-pad they're using. This is such a blast. Not to the past, because it's still a new generation game. Oh boy, I've bought this seriously like on every kind of, let's say, system I can think of. And I think this is one of those cool things that utilizes the Anbernic. If you just want to play some Android games, you can just do it with physical controls. I think the most appealing specs when it comes to, let's say, Anbernic, having this Android device with such power, you can just play all kinds of cool games, including some Minecraft. Oh man, it's kind of cool that it automatically like plug and play work. The overall experience is kind of good and also comes with vibration function. Maybe you can't hear it on the recording, but this works kind of good. And everything like looks absolutely amazing on this device. So if you love Minecraft and that kind of games, I think this would be absolutely extra cool addition for playing on a device like this. Another thing I wanted to check out is like how does it work when it comes to the, let's say, Anbernic and the TV out, where some of, let's say, the Anbernic devices have a mini HDMI. This doesn't have any feature like that. So we're going to be needing is an USB-C to an HDMI. I have this like USB thingy going on, so it's kind of cool. So if you're going to be configuring this device with controllers, you can just basically plug this thing in, but I'm just going to be using it as is for the HDMI out. Plugging this thing in will automatically, let's say, showcase what is going to be happening on the screen on your television, or in this case the monitor. And in this way we can actually plug in a controller into the USB hub. It's going to be slightly different like when it comes to, let's say, emulators, simply because if you want to play some games, it's going to be sometimes a little bit of a problem. Now you can just actually see that it works out of the box with an Xbox 360 controller. But what you can also do is get in Bluetooth, you connect it with the Bluetooth compatibility, and then actually do that. But oh boy, it struggles big time if you're going to be playing the game through this. That had a problem a little bit in the beginning, but let's get into the gameplay. And thanks to, let's say, the Xbox 360 or the X input, I really love these controllers because they are so much more better compatible, let's say, many different devices. But getting into the game, we don't have any problem whatsoever, and we can just play our games like this. And I think it's absolutely an awesome way just to play. And take consideration is when you're having the device like this, it's going to be so much better with overall emulation performance, but also with all the kind of different things you can do with it. I've been testing out a lot of, let's say, other, let's say, devices from Emulate or Powkiddy, but it also comes with a lot of, let's say, problems and limitations.